It was developed by an organization known originally as Better Angels, and the organizing factor behind that group of people was that they felt that in our country, people were not able to talk to one another, not just about political things, but almost anything. Almost anything became a political topic. So they decided that they were going to try to set up a way for people who were identified as leaning left and leaning right could learn to understand one another and could learn to talk to one another about hot topic issues. Those two trained I'm also a trained presenter for them, but I did not write this. Those two women wrote this with the intention of starting small, starting with easy topics that kids could handle without being upset by it or feeling threatened by the topics that came up. But every time we have taught this, and we've used a post-meeting questionnaire, and we ask the question, would you like to have the chance to learn to use these or to practice using these in a safe environment on more difficult topics? Almost without exception, the people will say yes, whether that's middle school kids or high school kids or college kids. So there is a hunger out there, I think, for people who, there's a large group of people who really do want to start to heal this nation by being able to speak to one another. So that's what we hope we're offering, a very small piece that will help these young people whom we've seen be able to talk to one another in school settings, use those skills in a way that's going to make it more possible for us to reach the vision that our democracy has. Just like with the other lessons, it is absolutely essential to remain nonpartisan and issue agnostic when you're teaching these. And for the two new people here, that's been my mantra all week long. And the reason is that if we are not nonpartisan and if we are not issue agnostic, then we are cutting ourselves out from certain school districts that feel as if the league is a left-leaning organization. And we don't want that to happen. We want every kid to have the opportunity to register and know that their vote is going to count, and every kid to learn the skills that are involved in bringing about change in society. And that includes conversation with one another. Okay, so that said, I did send out ahead of time to the people that I had in the registration links already a worksheet for today, and I asked if you would print it. If you didn't get it, it's okay. If you didn't print it, it's okay. It just would have saved you some writing. But you will need a pencil or a pen and a piece of paper for most of the things that we're going to do today. Based on suggestions from the teachers, they felt that in both of these lessons, it would be really good for kids to have some kind of notes that they could take with them afterwards. And so the teachers actually developed worksheets at different levels. This is not theirs. This is one that I pulled together last night, but it accomplishes the same factors. So let me, okay. And then for those people who, for Patrick and, I'm sorry, all of the things that we use, all of the teacher materials, can be found on the website, which is energizingyoungvoters.com. And to get to the modules, you go to the What Do We Do drop-down menu, or you go to the Apple and scroll down the page, and you will find all of the different modules that we offer. The ones that we're doing today are in the Fighting for Change section. When you hit the plus sign, you have a little drop-down, very brief description. And then when you click on the View Modules, the server will open with the lessons that are there, with the modules that are there. Just as in some of our other modules, you can see that there are some separate files. The one that says Across the Divide, Speak to Be Heard is used with the second one. And then there are some things that were, and the Rights and Responsibilities is with the first one, the listening. So they're kind of backwards there. but the other two are interesting. They're articles that were sent to us, or student essays. Those are civility essays that were written by students that are worth a quick look if you have a chance. So when you go to the module itself, the first one we're going to go to is the listening. And you'll see that there is a slideshow and that there is a script that exists for each one of the lessons. In addition, there's a feedback sheet in this one. This is the worksheet that you were sent last night. And this is a poll that we're going to use if we're not able to have kids get up and move around in the classroom. And there is a link on the slideshow to that. Okay, and then for the two new people, the scripts are written so that you actually can read them. Once you're in the classroom and using them, you're not going to have to do that. But it helps to have it as, it's almost like a written lesson plan word for word, if you want to put it in those terms. When I teach this in person and the group is small enough, so I'm talking, I guess the largest one was about 35 or 40 kids. We actually had the kids get up and move around for the beginning. And I would have them stand up and I would say, okay, I want you to decide what is your favorite kind of pizza. Do you like it without toppings or with toppings? And the kids would have to get up and move to one corner if it was without toppings, and the other corner if it was with toppings. And then, as before, we'd say, okay, somebody who likes it with toppings, give me the reasons why somebody should be in your group instead of in the other group. And they do that. And then you give them the chance for the other group to do the same thing. And then you give kids the chance to change their mind if they want to. They can switch positions. And then the second question is that we ask is something about what's your favorite sport? And this time we give them more choices. If it's football, go to this corner. If it's basketball, go to this corner. If it's volleyball, go to this corner. If it's soccer, go to this corner. And the same kind of thing. And the point that we make at the end of that is nobody has to believe the same thing. People have differences of opinion, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. We can listen, we can understand what their position is, and sometimes we change our mind and sometimes we don't. But listening to somebody else to understand what they think doesn't mean we have to believe the same thing. It just means we are trying to understand. Now, if you're using the poll, the link is there, and it would take you to this form, and you would fill it out, and then you would see the poll that comes up. So I'm going to stop. Okay, in the chat, I'm going to put the link to that poll. Try this. There it goes. All right, so if you click on that link, it should take you to that poll that you just saw on my screen. And you can answer the questions. And then when we get responses from everybody or almost everybody, we can take a look at the graph, and you can use it the same way that I just did speaking.
This is Fran. I'm not able to get it to respond to clicking on the circle.
Other people are. It's not, well.
Oh, well. Oh, wait a minute.
Try it again.
Yeah, no. Oh, no.
Okay. I can see that your cursor is there, but I can also see that you're not getting it. Yeah.
No.
All right. Let me just go to what the results are that we have now. All right. So I can go to the top of the screen where there are responses, and then you can see that in this room, there are more people like toppings than not. What do you know? And so you would ask, all right, somebody who was in that playing group, and I'm asking this seriously now of the group, somebody who was in that playing group, why did you choose that side? Anybody brave enough to share?
Uh, so I picked plain. I tend to like no toppings sometimes. I don't like meat a lot, and so toppings tend to have meat in them. And so I just go with cheese, and it seems a safer bet.
Okay, is there anybody else that chose just plain pizza who'd like to give the reason why?
Yeah, I would say for me, sometimes it allows me to get an extra slice with no toppings on it. So it can actually be my dinner for the night.
Okay, how about those of you who said you preferred toppings? Why did you say that?
I said
Sharon,
toppings.
I'm gonna say, Sharon, I said variety of toppings because you can then have a variety. So you don't have to have the same thing all the time. So you can have pizza with sausage, or you can have pizza with vegetables on it, or you can have pizza with pepperoni. So it makes the base, and then you can make it a variety. So it looks different every time you choose to eat it.
So you like the varieties, the spice of life. How about somebody else from that group?
Okay, Perry says that I like to put a lot of toppings that are actual vegetable oriented on it. And I like it because then I can make it more of a meal and think it's healthier. And so I like to load it with a variety of vegetables, olives, mushrooms, onions, garlic.
Stop, you're making me hungry. Okay, so at this point in time, did anybody change their position, or are you still satisfied being where you are? And I would do that, in person with the kids, and I would probably just go back to seeing you instead of using the chart here, but I want to stay on the chart because the next one is interesting. And you give kids the opportunity to change their positions. And this is a non-threatening way of saying, you can have your own opinion. It's not a big deal. There are different reasons why different people like different things. And if you look down at the team sport, it's really interesting. I think that graph there are 7 responses, and it looks as if each one was chosen by one person except for soccer. And there were 2 people who liked that. So who would like to explain why they think their team's sport is the best one?
I'll go. It's Allison. I put in rugby. My girls are playing rugby, and that is an all-inclusive sport. It needs really tall, fast people. It needs really strong people. It uses heavy people and light people. The rules are the same in men's and women's. There's versions, that people up to 60 can play, and versions 3-year-olds can play. So,
Okay,
inclusive sport that has been very good to my family.
thank you. Anyone else want to justify why their sport is the best sport?
I added baseball only because that's been such a bonding moment, and how I developed a really solid relationship with my dad for being Yankee fans and going a lot to games. And then just growing up in the Derek Jeter era. So baseball, obviously, is just a lot of fun to watch, and a lot of connections to family.
And how about one other person?
Sharon, I chose basketball because women and men can play basketball. And I've, played in high school, and I just like the fastness of it, running up and down the court and cheering, being in the stands, cheering the people on. So basketball, because it's for everybody.
Okay, I think you can hear that it offers you the possibility when you're working with kids to have them really see that multiple points of view are really okay, that there is not anything that somebody can say about why they personally believe something that should offend you, that it's their right to have that, to make that decision for themselves. So back to the,
Pat, this is Fran.
yes, Fran?
How do the students become engaged in this activity? if they're sitting in the classroom?
If they're in the classroom with us and I can get them up and moving around, that's how they become engaged.
No,
When they're
no,
not-
what, by the poll, the poll.
The poll is what I would use if I had to do it online, like I
Got it.
did with you.
All right,
Okay.
cool. Got it.
Okay, you could, once you're in, the classroom and you're the teacher, if you can't get that, kids up and moving around, you have a good sense of what you can do. Some people use thumbs up and thumbs down, there are multiple ways of getting feedback from kids, but all right. So it's easy to see that by looking at the news and social media and in our neighborhoods, that communication, whether it's about pizza or politics, is an issue today. Differences of opinion are inevitable, but we can learn how to manage differences and the conflict that sometimes comes from that. In order for democracy to prevail in our country, we need to be able to talk to one another in a civil manner, and we need to be able to listen to understand others, even if we do not agree with them. Today, you're going to have a chance to practice the skill of listening, which we believe is the first and most important of the communication skills. Because without it, if you can't really hear and understand another person, regardless of the content, you're just going to be listening to sounds and not really communicating. We'll also talk about your rights to be heard and respected, and your responsibility not just to give the same thing to the other person, but also your responsibility to speak what you believe. Because if you're not able to do that, then the only noise in the room is from people who don't think the way you do, and nobody gets to think about and appreciate what you believe. Active listening makes people feel understood and valued. And when people feel understood and valued, then common ground can be reached. It may not be a huge piece of common ground, but we can find some kind of common ground, and that's what starts understanding. Now, this would normally be hidden if you were using the slideshow with kids. But these were the basic goals that the writers of this were hoping to achieve. They started out with a so what question, and it was without the ability to engage in civil conversations, there was going to be a gulf that would grow between us and that democracy would grind to a halt. So this is in a hidden slide for the teacher. In this slide, when you're using it, I can't urge you to be careful enough about the language that you use when you're describing what is in those pictures, because our language has already assumed in many cases a left and a right lean. So in the notes for this script are some, the wording is pretty careful. You start by saying the world today is filled with hot topics. People have some really strong opinions about them, and they take sides and they disagree. Here are some of the things that young people before you have suggested are hot topics. The first one is immigration. The second one is January 6th. The third one is guns. The fourth one is COVID policies. The first one in the bottom row is education. The second one is the environment. The third one is privacy. And then you ask if the kids have any others. What we found when we piloted this was that we didn't use those single words. And for example, the third one across, where there are guns, the initial wording was gun control. And one of the students in one of the pilot groups said, you can't use that. And I had this blank look on my face and I said, all right, why? And he said, because to me, it's gun rights. I said, yeah, absolutely right. So how do we change it? So he suggested, and we have used since, just the single word guns, because that gives people the right to believe on one side or the other side. The same thing was true with the picture of January 6th. Initially, we said it was the Capitol protests, and that had a lean to it that was uncomfortable for some people. So when you're using this or anything else, think carefully about the wording and think if there is something that a person who is not taking the same positions that you do might object to. And be open to the criticism. Be open to saying, okay, how do we need to change it to make it better? So on the worksheet that I gave you, or on the piece of paper, if you've got that with you, what I'd like you to do is to write down first one thing that you know you can do to have a successful conversation with somebody on the other side. Just one thing. What's a trick or a strategy? If I'm in a classroom, I'm walking around at this time and I'm watching to see what the kids are writing. And one of the reasons for that is that without identifying the kid, I'm picking up on what some of the really good comments are so that I can comment on them as I'm walking around. So what have you put down? Just a couple of you share with me. What's one of the things? Perry?
Just ask the person how they are today. How's their day going?
Okay. Friendliness. What else?
I put down just being more knowledgeable on the topic than your counterpart, who might just be echoing, talking points.
Okay, so being knowledgeable about the subject is good. What else?
I find that if you just kind of try to put it back in your words of what you heard, and then ask them if that's correct in your assessment of what they just said.
Okay.
I'd throw out the topic very briefly, but then let them do more of the talking first, so you really understand where they're coming from.
And I've listened to their entire thing. Don't interrupt.
Yeah.
Okay.
Those two go together.
Yeah, they do. They do, but it's hard sometimes when you've got all your own ideas and you want to jump in.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
All right, so I have a sense that you folks have had some communications training and you do know some of the things that are important. The more sophisticated things that you said, you probably would not get from the kids. They might tell you something like, try not to interrupt, or try to maintain eye contact, or something of that sort, but you're going to get fewer responses than you were able to give me. All right, so let me go back. So one of the things that I hope that you can get out of this is that there are two things to remember. One of them is what active listening is not, and that is it is not agreement. And one of the things that it is hearing the total message, which several of you said. So on the worksheet that you have, I would have the kids write down what is active listening. And it is hearing the total message. So they have that when they go back. What is active listening not? It's not that you need to agree. So that they've got those things. All right. So we're going to use some of your ideas, but we're going to use them with day-to-day situations instead of hot topics. After you have some practice with easier situations, you can practice using a topic that might start a fight on the school playground or a sports event. And then you can graduate to the kinds of topics that we just had pictures of. But it's much easier if you start practicing with something that is not quite so inflammatory or hot. So the first thing that we're going to do is to practice listening for the feelings that come from someone when they're speaking about a topic that they care about. These are some of the emojis that might indicate what a person is feeling. And when I'm in the classroom and the kids have this worksheet or they have a sheet of paper, what I ask them to do is actually draw the emoji for what's going to happen next. And they kind of get a kick out of that. So I'm going to say some statements. And what I'd like you to do is to write down the emotion that you recognize as I speak. So are you ready? There's the first one. I'm gonna vote tomorrow for the first time, and I'm not sure that I'm really gonna do it right. The ballot and this whole process of voting, it seems pretty scary to me. It seems awfully complicated. So choose the emoji that you think might indicate what I was just feeling. And then write down either the word or draw the emoji. What'd you say?
Nervous,
Okay. What else could have been?
Embarrassed,
Could have been. Anything else that you picked up on?
Unsure.
Okay. Let's try another one. I don't know what I'm going to do. I've been biting my nails. If my work doesn't improve soon, I'm going to fail this class. What you feeling? What'd you choose?
I said scared.
Yeah. Anything different than that, or is that pretty much what everybody picked?
Nervous.
Okay. And then the last one. Okay. I have tried my best, but I just can't seem to satisfy anybody at all, especially my teacher. What'd you hear?
Frustrated.
Okay. What else?
I said angry.
Yeah, that's another possibility for that one. Okay, so the first step in active listening, which is what we're trying to get the kids to do, is to have them recognize emotions involved in what people say, and that we need to recognize what that emotion is first. And it's okay to make a mistake, because if you've made a mistake, the other person will correct you soon. We're going to give you a chance, I hope. This is where the breakout rooms come in, folks. We're going to see what happens. I'm going to give you a chance to do a trial of active listening just for feelings. So I'm going to go back to that slide again first and let you take a look at those feelings. And then in the classroom, I would pair you up with one other person. And the person whose name is close, just say, make somebody go first. So I usually say the person whose first name is closest to the beginning of the alphabet will be the first speaker. I have had scenarios printed on cards, and I walk around and I give each person a card that they can use during this exercise. And what they need to do is first think about the feeling that might engender in them, and then think about how they're going to say it. So they're going to act it out. So the first person reads their card with the feeling. The second person needs to identify what the feeling is, just like we just did. And then they switch and they do the same thing in the reverse. That takes probably a minute or two at the most. And then you can bring them back. And I'm not going to put you into the breakout rooms. I'm just not tech savvy enough to do that for that short a period of time. But I think you get the idea. All right. So then what we want to do is to help them understand that there are sometimes things that people do when they're listening actively that can actually interfere with what they want to have happen. You just went through identifying the speaker's feelings. The next thing you need to do is to respond to that feeling. And you're going to see two of those young people I talked about trying to do that and making mistakes while they're doing it. So we asked the kids on the worksheet to try to guess ahead of time what the mistake is when we stop the video, and then to go ahead and listen to the next one. So let me start this.
Charlotte, I'm so upset right now. It's my senior season and I finally made varsity. And now all the games are canceled because of COVID and I don't know what to do. It's like I'm never going to play soccer again.
Well, did you talk to the coach and see what he could do? Maybe he'll let you play. So
I don't want to talk to the coach right now because I'm just so upset. Like I just need to get my feelings out.
well, maybe if you try talking to him, he'll be able to help you with this COVID situation.
I don't know. I just can't talk to him right now. I'm just so upset.
Okay, so we're gonna
Okay, so we would ask the kids to try to think about what mistake she was making. Can you tell me what you think was happening there? And again, they would be doing this like with one another. They're not exposing themselves in front of a whole group the way I'm asking you to do right now. Talk to one another and tell one another what you think the mistake was that she made. And then we'll show you. She'll tell you what it was.
Instead of listening herself, she said to go talk to somebody else. She was giving advice and she wasn't asked for advice.
Okay, let's see what
She
she
never,
says. Go ahead.
never acknowledged the other person's feelings.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
I was going to say, let Charlotte tell you now. Where is it?
we're gonna pause right here. This is an example of how to not actively listen. So as you can see, Jess was very upset and I did not recognize her feelings, but instead right away, without letting her express herself, I just tried to jump and solve the solution for her. So you do not want to do this with active listening, and instead you want to hear her thoughts before you try and bring up a solution.
So see how smart you were? Okay. There's a second example that they give too. So I'm going to play that for you and stop it and see if you can decide for yourself what mistake she was making.
Now we're going to do a second example of how to not actively listen.
Charlotte, I'm so upset right now. I finally made varsity and I'm a senior, and now all the games are canceled because of COVID. And I feel like I'm never going to play soccer again. And this was my one chance to finally prove myself.
Well, the same thing happened to me. I finally got the lead in the school play and really even perform at all because of COVID.
I know, Charlotte, but I just kind of don't care about that right now. I just need to talk about me, and I'm just so upset.
Okay, so we're going to pause here again. So this
Okay, and again, what was she doing that was a mistake?
She went straight to her own feelings.
Okay, and that is what she will explain.
This is another example of how to not actively listen. So as you can see, Jess was very upset. Instead of me letting her express her emotions, instead I just jumped and turned it onto myself to explain an example of when it happened to me. So you do not want to do this when actively listening. Instead, you want to recognize their emotions and let them expand upon it now. So
All right, and then the next thing that she's going to do is or they're both going to do, is to try to give an example of good active listening skills.
now we're going to do an example on which I actively listened to Jessica's issues.
Charlotte, I'm so upset right now. I finally made varsity and I'm senior, as you know, and now all of the games are canceled and I'm never going to be able to play soccer again. And I'm so upset and I have no idea what to do right now.
Well, I'm really sorry you feel that way, Jess. I'm sorry that happened to you. I know it must be tough.
Yeah, I'm just so upset. And, I was looking forward to being recruited and scholarships and going to college and maybe playing soccer. And I feel like now that's all gone and don't know what to do.
Yeah, I'm really sorry. That's terrible. I know how focused you are on your future and how this can impact it. And I'm sorry that happened to you, Jess.
Thank you, Charlotte. And thank you for listening.
Great. So this was an example of how to actively listen. So not only did I let her express the issue and what happened, but I also let her explain how this made her feel and expand on this as well. So this is an example of how to actively listen because I did not turn it onto myself at all. And I did not try to jump in with a solution right away. Instead, I just let her express her emotions.
What we would ask the kids to do right now and ask you is to, on that sheet of paper, write down one thing they sometimes think they do. It's probably one of those two things. Which one are you more likely to make a mistake doing? Are you likely to give advice, or are you likely to just jump right in and give an example of when it happened to you? And this is not for sharing, this is just for you. Chance to reflect. So when Jess and Charlotte were talking, what I hope you were able to see was that in the good example, Charlotte was able to identify what Jess was feeling. And then she responded to that feeling like, gee, I'm really sorry that happened to you, Jess. It must really feel terrible. And then she started responding to the content. She started asking or responding to the fact that it was soccer, and that she recognized that Jess was upset because she wouldn't be likely to be able to get a scholarship, that the scouts wouldn't be looking for her, and so forth. And then when she summarized that, then Jess was able to say, yes, that is what I was feeling. If Charlotte had made a mistake in judging what Jess was thinking and feeling at the time, it would have been okay, because when she tried to summarize, then Jess would have said, no, that's not what I'm feeling, and expanded on it further. So it's important for people to understand that it is okay when you're listening to not get it right, that the conversation can continue until you do get it right. This again is a hidden slide for the teacher about putting kids into breakout rooms if you are doing this remotely. Like I said, I hope you never have to, because it's hard. It's much easier to do it in person. Right. So within the group that's working in the room, the next thing we want the kids to do, they've already responded by identifying feelings. So now we want them to try to also respond to the content, what's making them have the feelings. So to listen for feelings plus content in order to hear the whole message, you can keep asking for clarity. Pursue the exact feeling, like, you sound angry, are you? And let them say, well, no, I'm not angry. I'm nervous. I really want to make sure that I get into college. And we also want to encourage them to pay attention, not just to the words, but also to the body language, to the tone of voice, and to the loudness or the softness of the voice, and the position of the body in the room. In a classroom at this point in time with two co-presenters, and that's something else I should fill Patrick and Harvey in on. And I think Rebecca too. I don't think we were here when we talked about it. We never send somebody into the room alone. When people are teaching these things for us, it's really important to have a backup person for a couple of reasons. You can practice this, but you're never going to remember everything. And so having a second person there to help fill in the blanks as things go wrong is really helpful. The other thing is, something can happen. Like I mentioned, one day, one of my co-presenters went into a coughing jag and literally had to leave the room and leave the school and go get help. So having a second person there means that there's not an interruption in the actual presentation. So having two people is helpful. In this particular lesson, it's essential, because there are times when the two leaders are role modeling for the kids. So I can't be two people, so you're just going to have to pretend that I am when I'm moving from side to side. The one co-presenter, we would use a voting simulation or a voting experience first, only because we're the League of Women Voters, but you know your kids and you know your context better, and I don't say that you have to do it that way. Pick something that's going to be engaging to the kids and to have the conversation. So, but as one co-presenter, I would say, there's this big push to vote in this upcoming election. And I don't come from a voting family. My parents never voted, and so I don't see the importance of voting. I'm not going to vote just to impress others. And then the other person would say, you sound as if you're feeling pretty confused about the upcoming election. I'm really sorry you feel that way. Is that really how you feel? Are you feeling confused? Yeah, I do, I guess. It's just that there's all this stuff going on, and it seems like such a big deal's being made out of the election that I'm going to feel guilty if I don't vote. But since my family's never done that, I really don't see why I should. It's not going to make any difference. And then the other person would reflect again, well, I can see why you might feel that way. You're confused because you don't know if it's important or not. I can understand that I can understand that you're confused. How do you think you're going to resolve this for yourself? And that can open up the second part of the conversation. Or you seem to be feeling pressured. It never feels good to worry about something, about impressing other people. I know you care about the future, so I'm sorry you're feeling stressed about voting, and I hope those feelings pass quickly. So you would have that written conversation down, and you can actually use cards when you're standing in front of the room. It's not, it's like prompt cards, and the kids would understand that. All right, and then the next part would be to actually give them a chance to practice in a pair. When I finish giving the directions, I would say to the kids, we're going to go back to the last slide that I showed you. So you have the steps on the board that you can refer to. But here's what we're going to do. We're going to give each one of you a set of scenarios. One of you is going to be the reader first, and the other one is going to be the listener. The first person is going to choose the statement to read dramatically, like you're going to be role-playing it. And then your partner is going to try to respond to the feelings and to the content. And then the person who was the first person is going to try to continue the conversation on. You have to remember to respond to feelings and content when you're listening, and then to try to hear the full message. And to do that, you should also be paying attention to tone and posture and expression. So I'm going to go back to this chart. Actually, let me just double check something. I have a slide with there's a slide with some scenarios. Okay, I'm hoping this is going to work in breakout rooms. So what I'd like you to do is to read those 3 scenarios and decide which one you think you would like to use when I put you into breakout rooms with one other person. It won't matter if both of you choose the same thing. But try to remember what it is so that when you go into the breakout room, you can actually use those words. You can write them down if it helps you. All right, I'm going to put you into rooms with 2 people in each room. So we've got 3, 6, 9, 12. So I will be somebody's partner too. When we get into the breakout room, the person whose first name is closest to the beginning of the alphabet will go first. And we'll read that scenario expressing their feelings and why they're feeling that way. And then the second person will respond to them. So we're going to try to have a continuing conversation about your scenario for about a minute. I'm going to come out of the breakout rooms. No, I'll send you a message saying it's time to switch. And then I'll have you go into the breakout room again, and you can switch with a partner. Let's see if we can do it. I'll do it piece by piece.
So the message will be in chat?
The message will come up on the screen for you.
Oh, okay.
Do you see there you go. Okay, Naomi, you're my partner. Did you choose a scenario?
I'm sorry, number 1. But
Okay.
I forget
exactly what it was, and I don't have the list.
All right. I think it was essentially that you were, I would have to go back to it myself. It was that somebody posted something on Facebook that upset you greatly.
Yes, I remember.
Okay, you want to try it?
You go first, please.
Oh, okay. That means I have to switch my thinking again. I just got that one. Okay. I am so upset. I was supposed to go to the playoff game with my friend's family, and now I can't go because my sister's sick. And my mother says I can't go because she's contagious, and nobody is going to get sick because my sister is sick if I go, but I can't go, and I'll never have another chance to do this again.
Oh, I'm so sorry that that happened to you. That's really very, very discouraging. I'm sorry. Maybe you'll be able to go another time.
I don't think I will. I mean, you know, this is a once in a lifetime opportunity. I'm just so upset.
I understand that. Oh, yes, that is very upsetting.
I get the feeling that I get the feeling like the whole world is against me.
I'm so sorry that you've blown this so greatly out of proportion that you think the whole world is against you. But really, I don't think it is. I think this is a very distressing moment, and there'll be some resolution coming up for you.
Oh, I hope that you're right.
I do too.
Okay. Do you want to try yours?
I am so upset that I confided in my friend. I am so upset and really beyond expressing how horrible I feel about her and about this. How could she have been so disloyal and revealed my confidence and then posted it like that? Oh, it's awful.
Oh, Naomi, I'm really sorry to hear that. I think I hear you just feeling like everything has gone wrong, that it's almost like the end of the world.
Yes, that's how I feel.
I'm really sorry. Maybe things will look a little bit brighter tomorrow.
I don't know what to do about it. Should I do something?
You know, I don't know either. I don't think I can give you advice about this, but I really do want you to know that I feel really badly for you. I'm happy to listen whenever.
I must confide in you and tell you that I told you this because I thought you might be able to have some solution. Why can't you help me?
I would like to, but I am.
What you do, isn't it?
It is.
Because you never know when you're really asking for help or whether you just want to vent. And
Yes.
If the person tells you that they want more than just venting, you should be responsive, shouldn't you?
I would think so. I think, yeah, if you'd really, I think what I might have said to you, those of you who are coming in, Naomi really challenged me, which was good. She jumped in, she wanted me to give her advice, and I was trying very hard not to do that. I was trying just to be a listener and let her vent. But she said, no, I want your advice. And so I was kind of confounded for a few minutes. I think if that were the case, I would say, okay, let's see what we can do. Let's sit down together and try to make a plan or something like that. But I'm curious about the experiences that the rest of you had in the conversation. Those of you who just jumped in, I was saying, Naomi was good. She put me on the spot.
So sorry.
No, that was good. I'm serious. That was a good experience for me. So thank you. What happened with some of the rest of you in your rooms? Was it hard? Was it easy?
I was with Allison. I don't want to speak for her, but for me, it was difficult because I couldn't separate, I guess for now, until I keep practicing teacher mode versus student mode. I could, that was tough in the beginning.
Good point. Yeah.
So right now that was the tough thing. So it would be a lot of practice with that. So
Really
I can't
listening.
speak. Yeah,
Yeah.
I can't speak for Allison right now, but that's something that I had a difficulty with.
Thanks, Patrick.
Right. That's what we talked about. Like, how are we supposed to be able to identify when I'm in active listening mode versus when I'm in, boss mode and supposed to be answering, fixing somebody's problem. So I think it's a complete, like, I've got to learn when to flip that switch.
Fran, you were shaking your head. Did you want to add something?
Well, in my session with,
Yeah.
I'm
I'm
sorry.
sorry.
Go ahead, Harvey.
In my session with Perry, and I hope I'm presenting her name right. We used the kid who couldn't go to the playoff game because her sister was sick, and it's one. You could, if all you want is the other side to say, why do you feel that way, and I feel your pain, and so on. Pretty soon, an AI device could be doing that. And my bias is to solve problems. So we got into the business of, well, even though you don't have symptoms, you could be contagious, and I don't know, either push back or kind of present the rationale for why your parents may have granted you. So I call it being like an active listener, not just an empathetic listener, trying to add some value, a value-added listener.
Okay, so that's kind of like the giving advice scenario that Jessica talked about. There is a time for giving advice, but when we were doing this, it was trying to get at the thing that's difficult for most of us, and that is to keep our mouth shut and just listen. Fran, you were going to say something.
I wanted to follow up on.
Okay, Carrie, because
Harvey.
you were in the group, and then
Yeah.
Fran will come to you.
And the trying to hold that listening space, it becomes awkward, obviously, when you're role playing that you don't then go into conversation as a two-way street kind of thing. But I was thinking to myself as
You froze.
so how many times one might say to the other person, okay, that you might say, put in your mind, I'm going to say 3 times, 3 different ways. Oh, that sounds rotten. Before you might before you go into the segue of, oh, well, what are you going to do tonight now? Or would you like me to do something with you tonight? Or what can I do to help you? So, kind of plant in your brain, you're going to 3 times acknowledge it and then offer, how can I help you?
Okay. That works. Now, Fran, thank you. I'm sorry I jumped out on you a couple of times.
That's okay. We did, Jean and I did, the first one was the kid that, couldn't go to the game because his sister got sick. And, I validated it, that he was feeling that way.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't make that feeling go away. I think sometimes you validate the person if they're having an emotion. So I agreed.
I was so much wanting to jump in and say, just go get a COVID test. or just tell them you wear a mask. And I didn't.
It's so, when I asked you initially to write down something ahead of time that you knew was your fault, if you want to say it's, fault is probably not a good word, but the thing that you make mistakes in conversations, I am always catching myself one-upping somebody. It's a horrible trait. And now that I have gone through this, I know I do it, and I get angry with myself when I do it. But each time it happens, I find that the space between the times when I'm doing it is extending. So I think those of you who are tending to jump in and solve the problem might find the same thing, that now that you're conscious of the fact that that can happen and that it can actually, won't necessarily stop the conversation, but it doesn't let the other person feel heard. It lets them feel as if you're the one with the power. You're the one who's got the solutions. And what you really want them to feel is that you get it. You really do understand. And in doing that, you're showing them that you value them and you value their experience, not your own. So it's not an easy thing to do. And don't be too hard on yourselves if you start catching yourself doing it now and saying, oh, geez, we did that day. And now I see myself doing it. It is so easy to fall into those traps. It's never going to go away completely. Anybody else want to share anything from that experience, or? Okay, so in active listening, there are a couple of things to remember. Nobody can read another person's mind, and that might seem really obvious, but very often people just kind of assume the other person knows what we're thinking about. If we listen carefully, and if we listen for the content as well as for the feelings, we're improving our chances of having them want to do the same thing for us. So one part of active listening is hearing the rational, or what is said, the content. The other part, as we've said, is hearing the feelings, or how it's said. And the third part of that is integrating both of those things. That requires two qualities on your part. And I'm going to ask you to please write these words down. If you've got the worksheet, they're on there for you, but one of them is empathy and one of them is acceptance. And as the definition of empathy, the thing that can help us learn how to listen effectively, listen carefully, empathy is the ability to understand somebody else's feelings, even if it's different from yours. Empathy is the ability to understand somebody else's feelings, even if it's different from yours. And then acceptance is the ability to take the other person's position as true for them, irrespective of whether you agree. So acceptance is the ability to take the other person's position as true for them. Doesn't have to be true for you as well.
What does ability to take the other person's position? What is this word take?
The ability to accept the other person's.
Accept. All right.
Yeah. The word acceptance was what we were trying to define.
Okay.
And that's why I used take there, or that's why it was there.
Got it. Cool. Thanks.
Okay, so active listening is important. But many times, even if you understand the other person's point of view, it's hard to accept that it's true for them, even though it's okay not to believe the same thing. It's just hard to believe that they could actually think that way. There can be that feeling in you of really strong disagreement. Since other people are not our clones, conflict is inevitable in life. And so we need skills to be able to deal with those differences. And communication skills can help us manage that conflict. And I love that cartoon. I mean, there are others that are similar, but that one, I'll tell you, the optical illusion in that I had to look at that so many times before I really saw what was going on there. It's a good example. Managing conflict is not easy, and people have different styles of trying to deal with it. Some styles are good, and some of them are not so mentally healthy for us. So I want you to think about how each one of these looks when you and an important person in your life, like your best friend or an adult, have a conflict. Here are the main ways that we see a lot. The first one I just clicked up there, that in which people deal with conflict. The first one is force or competition. In that method, what you're trying to do is to prove that you're right and they're wrong, that your idea is better than theirs. And that's true even if the facts are on your side. This often makes people want to fight back, and it doesn't resolve the conflict. In fact, it usually makes it worse. The second thing that can happen is that you can avoid the situation. You can pretend nothing's wrong, even if you really feel hurt or angry. You just completely ignore the differences in opinion. An example of that might be if someone your age that you admire makes you feel like your clothes are not in style. You feel put down, but you don't know what to do or what to say. So it seems easier to do nothing. So that's avoidance, getting yourself away from it. And the third way of dealing with conflict that some people have is suppression. And that can be two-sided. It can be suppressing your own feelings or suppressing the other person's feelings. When you do it to yourself, you're essentially telling yourself that your feelings don't matter, and when it's the other person, you're essentially saying the other person's feelings don't matter. Either you don't express your feelings or you don't let the other person express their feelings. And an example might be when somebody interrupts you, saying that your ideas are stupid or wrong, or you do that to the other person. You're in the middle of the conversation. You say, oh my God, that is so ridiculous. Comments like that just shut down the conversation between people. So instead of being able to continue the conversation and try to resolve the conflict, you shut up or they shut up and they don't say anything else. So those are the things that are no's, that are common mistakes. The difference doesn't go away. It just goes underground. It gets buried. So how do we work through those differences? We need some basic understandings. Before we go on, we need to talk about the word civility, which is the foundation of all effective communications. And what I'd like you to do is to write the word civility on your paper and then circle the root word in it. What's the word that it comes from? And then try to write a definition of civility in your own words. If civil is the root word, what does that mean to you? What's a good definition of civility? Beth, what did you come up with?
I came up with reasonable and fair in our interactions with others.
Thank you. Eileen, how about you?
I said listen and respect.
Thank you. Harvey, how about you?
Respectful.
Jean? You're muted, Jean. You're muted.
It's long. Common understanding of acceptable levels of respect in our behavior.
Thank you. And Fran, how about you?
Behavior of displaying respectful interaction that is managed and not too pushy or mean.
Okay. All right. The word actually comes from a Latin word civilis, which means relating to public life or befitting a citizen in public life. The dictionary definition is very close to what a lot of you said. It's the use of politeness and courtesy in behavior or speech. So if I were I would have been walking around the class looking at what the kids were writing down, and I'd ask them to give me a thumbs up, because most of them come pretty close to that. They have a general understanding of the fact that you're supposed to be polite and civil, but they may not always use it. But give them a thumbs up that they have the definition. So it sounds easy, but it's easier said than done. Communications must build on that foundation, the foundation of civility. And unless we embrace that, and we are polite, and we are courteous in our behavior and our speech, conflict can't be managed easily. We can't deal with our differences if we can't be polite to one another. It winds up that we'll be more like in a situation with people where you never know which side the other shoe is going to fall on, how the relationship is going to be balanced. Or sometimes you're in a situation where, okay, you win one, I win one, you win one, I win one, but there's no real resolution of conflict between the two people. The second understanding that's really important for us to have is that we all have rights and we all have responsibilities. And on your paper, would you write down those two words, rights and responsibilities, and then write a definition of what rights means to you and what responsibilities means to you in your own words. This is another situation where in a classroom I'd be walking around, and when you see a student who said something that's really powerful or worth repeating, just say it out loud. You don't have to attribute it to that particular student, but that person will know that they've done something well and feel pretty good about it. And yet everybody's hearing the words. Piri, what'd you write for one or the other?
Okay. For rights, I wrote that I have the right to have the freedom to decide how I worship, to make my own medical decisions and financial decisions, who I associate with, free to speak civilly and politely my views.
Okay. Patrick?
All right, I put rights, what the Constitution states with laws, and responsibility to understand how it can be used.
Okay, Naomi, how about you?
Please forgive me, the phone rang and I didn't hear the question.
Okay, your excuse. Allison?
For rights, I have automatic privileges or laws received without effort or payment.
Okay. And who have I missed? Rebecca, I haven't heard from you in a bit. What'd you have?
Oh, I always struggle, but I was thinking rights are more something that's designated to a person, that maybe their abilities to be an individual in society.
Okay, anybody else want to add anything?
Oh, this is Eileen. I wrote down not restricted.
Rights are not restricted?
Not restricted.
Okay.
Yeah, I like that.
Okay. I'll get to the definitions that we have for you in just a second. But anybody who follows the Marvel universe that knows that even those who are supposed to be on the same team often have a lot of differences. So even if we're working towards the same goal, conflict and differences can arise. You can see this in our democracy. In the USA, we put a really high priority on basic human rights, but we don't always put that belief into our everyday interactions. Those are the ones that you and I have. In our everyday life, if we're good citizens, each one of us has both the right and the responsibility to communicate our point of view about our conflicts effectively. Remembering that each and every one of us has rights and responsibilities, and putting what those means into practical use can help us work together better. So I'm going to check those definitions. These are the ones that we used in the development of the program. We said that rights were those guaranteed conditions that should be given to everyone all of the time. Now, some of you were very specific about what those rights were, and others of you were more general. So we looked at it in the more general way, and neither way is right. And neither way is wrong, neither way is right. It's not the only, but that's what we were looking at. And for responsibilities, we clarified it by saying there's something that we're always expected to do, or a way we're always expected to act, and a way we're always expected to treat one another. For example, I have the right to be treated with respect. That's something that should happen all the time. But then I have the responsibility to treat others with the same kind of respect. Or another one, I have the right to be heard, to have my ideas expressed and really listened to. But then I have the responsibility to do that for other people, to listen to them as well. In other words, it's the golden rule, the do unto others as you would have them do unto you. And in today's world, in learning how to communicate, that's the foundational element that we see is missing in our nation, in our media, and in our neighborhoods. And I can't emphasize this enough. We can teach and we can learn skills forever, but unless we understand that that golden rule is a cornerstone, the foundation underlying any communication skills, then we can never be consistently effective in communications. To really work through our differences, we need to learn how to collaborate and negotiate.
Right.
The more skilled we become at doing that, at collaborating and negotiating, the more effective we can become in working with one another in a civil way, in order to bring about real solutions that will have a real impact. The key to managing conflict effectively is something that I don't think I think about often enough, and that is that we really need each other. I need to work with other people in a way where both of our positions are heard and we jointly come to an acceptable outcome. I don't want to be responsible for making the world exactly the way I think it should be. There are a variety of communication skills that can help us manage that conflict. And they include the active, attentive listening, both verbally and non-verbally, that we've just talked about and practiced in a very minimal way. And we can also learn to do some clear, respectful speaking, both verbally and non-verbally. We need to be able to identify our differences respectfully. That's the old, we'll need to just agree to disagree kind of feeling. And we also have to learn how to come to mutual compromise and agreement, giving in some cases. And it is our civic duty to communicate well. We each have the right and responsibility to communicate effectively. And that form that says rights and responsibilities, that is a PDF, and you can get that on the website. And in person, I usually give a copy of that to the kids in the class. We need to remember that conflict's inevitable, but that it can be managed. We need to remember that unless people feel really heard and valued, that civility can't be achieved. And that, like anything else, any other skill, it takes practice to be developed and perfected. So one of the things I'm going to ask you to write down right now is, what will you do? What is one thing you'll try to make a commitment to do based on what has happened to you so far in today's meeting? What's one thing you'll make a commitment to try? And this is personal. You don't need to share this. Okay. All right, I'm going to go back to the website again and go to the speaking module and just show you what else is there. This time you'll see that there are two folders. One is for high school and college, and one is for middle school. And that was based on what happened during our pilot program. Basically, it's a change in the level of activities, the level of experiences that the kids might have, and its language. There is also a speaking worksheet there, which you got last night, but again, a sheet of paper will be fine. And this Across the Divide, how to speak to be heard, just has a summary of some of the things that we'll talk about and we'll try to practice today. Going to go to the high school and the college one. And actually, it's 2:30. Before we start this, let's take a 10-minute break. Can you come back, or roughly 10 minutes, come back at 2:45? So that would be 12 minutes for us, for those of you who are in different time zones. So quarter of the hour. Okay, so you had a chance to share your own you and I statements, and you came up with the wingdinger of a you statement and a best I statement that you could get from that. So in the group that had Allison, Eileen, Fran, and Joan in it, who can share with us what your you statement zinger was and then how you've modified that? Fran, you were
Really follow those directions too well, unless somebody else wants to.
Yeah, we didn't follow those directions.
Go ahead, Fran.
Yeah, we each said our you statement emphatically, and then we came up with I feel statement. For three of them had picked the team scenario. I had picked the movie scenario.
Okay, was there one that was outstanding? That really had everybody laughing?
No, what we had was we had a discussion about how to come up with the because part of the phrase.
Okay, you want to share what insights you had? None.
It was a stumper. Yeah, we had a discussion about that. We were uncertain how to present that.
How to give the reason why you.
Yes.
Okay.
Does that have to be from a first person perspective, or can that be?
Yeah, it should be,
else?
because what you're trying to do is to change your expression to your own experience and not making somebody else feel as if they're being attacked. So instead you say, I'm feeling this way because, and yet you're talking about the same situation where you'd probably like to say, you stupid SOB, whatever it might be, why they have upset you to the point that you're upset. How about the group that had Beth, Patrick, Piri, and Rebecca in it? What did you come up with?
Okay, Piri is going to speak.
Good.
Okay. Coach, you're not fair. I don't know why I even come to practice.
Good.
And,
I can imagine being the coach and going, oh, out.
I feel discouraged when you don't put me in the game because I really want to help our team win. And I come to all the practices and memorize the plays. Can you tell me what I need to do to play in the games?
Ooh. Good going, you guys.
I've been practicing for a long time because of my job and my life. But when I'm in the moment, I really have to take a deep breath and say, okay, how can I make this an I statement and a because statement and not an attack statement? So it does take a real discipline, I think, for most human beings.
And practice again, like we said before. Piri, your experience, your life experience, is important in this situation, I think, because I'm sure you found along the way that you got very different reactions from clients or from whoever you were working with, depending on how you framed what you were hoping to get out of it. Am I right?
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
And that's what we're hoping that the kids can walk away with too, that You can say the same thing in a number of different ways, but one way is going to let people have a better chance of listening to what you are trying to say, to listening to your feelings, as well as to listening to the content. So the two lessons are kind of interrelated at that particular point. If we had time, I would put you back in and make you do it again with a different set of scenarios, but I'm not going to do that because I want you to see some of the other mistakes that the kids came up with, common traps they call these.
I feel hurt because you always forget my birthday.
Anybody pick out what the trap was in that one?
Yeah, she's still attacked.
Right, right. And she used the word always. Listen to what Abby said.
How about I feel hurt when you forget my birthday?
All right, a little bit less inflammatory.
I feel angry when you never yell at them for staying up late because you always made me go to bed early when I was their age.
Again.
This might be better. I feel angry when they are allowed to stay up late because I remember having to go to bed early when I was their age.
All right, and then if we had more time, but we don't, I'm going to go on. This is another situation.
I feel like I just don't understand. So can you tell me, how did you come up with that way of looking at it? The clear intention of the word that is to make me feel stupid or ridiculous. How about leaving it out and saying, I feel like I don't understand and would like to know how you see things that way. I understand you're against the death penalty, but how can you believe serial killers should be allowed to live? I can't win with this one. If I argue, then I'm sticking up for serial killers. How about leaving the loaded part out of it and saying, I understand you're against the death penalty. Can you explain why you feel this way for all cases? Another thing to keep in mind is that it's often better to skip the question altogether and make a clear statement instead. In the example we just gave, instead of saying, can you explain to me why you feel this way for all cases, it would be clearer and more direct to say something like, I understand you're against the death penalty. Tell me more about why you feel this way for all cases. I appreciate that you support immigration reforms, but why do you think illegal immigrants deserve free insurance when my mother can't even get her cancer treatments? No matter what I'll say, I'll be dissing your mom. So, leave the emotion out of it if you really want to ask a genuine question. How about, why do you think undocumented immigrants should be eligible for free health insurance? Or a statement like, your views are important to me. Tell me why you think undocumented immigrants should be eligible for free health care insurance.
Okay. All right, so I think those kids did a pretty good job giving some very clear examples that all of us have seen in our day-to-day lives of people, especially like some of those trick questions or using the words that make you feel like you're stupid, whatever. One of the things that I have told kids is, if you're saying something to another person, like the one about immigration, if you can put the word dummy at the end of whatever it is you're saying, it's probably not what you should be saying. You should probably try to work on it in a way that's going to allow somebody to hear you instead. So let's see. So that next part, the slide that I just showed you, what we would do would be to break you down into groups again and give you some a chance to actually turn and talk to one another and practice some of the things that you've done, and then switch roles. In the teacher's notes, there are all of those scenarios that I've used during the day today, as well as a whole bunch of other ones that you can choose from. But again, you know your own context best. And so I would urge you to use things that are going to be appropriate for your kids, the age that your kids are, and the setting in which you live. But at this point, what we would do is give people practice in having these conversations, reminding them to know your goal. What do you want to get out of it? Use I statements, avoid the words always and never, and then ask genuine questions to try to get an understanding. Those are the scenarios, more scenarios. And then the last piece of all is just something that you probably are quite aware of. Although someone told me after, I can't remember, not too long ago, that the percentages in this graph have been modified, have been revised with research that's taken place since this was established. But the point of the graph is that even after all of this work that we've done, and we've worked so hard on our words and on listening for feelings and on recognizing them and not jumping in and trying to resolve them and saying things in a way that will let somebody else hear us, that only accounts for about 7% of what happens in a communication between two people. That the tone of voice that people use, that the pauses that go between what we say, that the facial expressions that are on our, right in somebody else's face, the crossed arms or the tapping of the fingers or the rolling of the eyes communicate a whole lot to the person that is listening at the other end. And if we're doing things that we know interfere with that conversation that we're trying to have, we have to become just as aware of those as we are of the things that we learn during the speaking and listening part. And it's the same thing. If we make a mistake, if we catch ourselves doing it, we can repair the situation by just owning it and saying, oh, geez, I did it again. I'm really sorry. And then pick up the conversation from there and try to go on. When I'm working with kids, I give them the example of for the tone of voice of when my daughter was 13 and she would come home from school and she would say something to me that was really not a terrible thing to say, but she would say it with a tone of voice like, oh my God, Mom, you are so stupid. And it was the tone of voice that was communicating way more than what she was actually saying in her words. And so my answer would always be no. Yes. And so if you want to get to the yes, you have to become aware of those things as well that are interfering with your conversation with somebody else. So I think we're coming up close to the end, but I don't want to take up all the time. What kinds of questions and comments and suggestions do you have?
Pat, excuse me.
Oh,
go ahead, Perry.
Are you sure? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And we may not do it now, but when I go on the site to find the module and the script, I have difficulty. I need some more lessons in how to show the presentation, but also be able to read the script. So that's maybe an after, another meeting or something like that. Okay. Plus, when I went in yesterday because I have a meeting this afternoon with a presentation. And when I went into the suffrage, I couldn't find the same script as you used yesterday. So I think I need a little help in that regard.
All right. What I do when I'm working in person is I actually, let me see if I can, I'm going to change my background. So please don't mind my office background. But what I actually do is print out the script and I have it in a binder.
Okay.
And I have it in front of me when I'm doing, you're talking about when you're doing something remotely, right?
No, well, when I'm in a classroom,
okay,
and I have I know about split screen, but I haven't used them for a while. And I'm just was wondering how you do it. I mean, I'm really comfortable with paper.
Yep, and I am too. I think the thing that I said yesterday is when you are starting to do this, do it in the way that is easiest and most comfortable for you.
Yeah.
If that means having a script in your hand, that's fine. I have seen young people especially get up and look as if they're, ready to read a dissertation, but they're just using it to refer to. They're
Right.
not, except for the timeline of suffrage, which you can read like it's a story. And that's fine. That's not going to interfere with the meaning at all. But even when I'm doing something relatively infrequently, I will go with the notes in my hand to be sure that I don't miss something. Becky, you had a question too, right?
Yes, so I was wondering how long the entire presentation is, and did you find that you broke it up into 2 presentations, one listening, one speaking, or how'd you set it up?
In most cases, these lessons are designed to fit into a 40-minute class period, and that's with the minimum amount of practice that exists in the lesson. If you've got an 80-minute class period, which is block scheduling, which many schools around here have, you can do one of 2 things. You can either do the listening lesson the way you saw it today, and then use the second half of the period to provide more practice. Or you can do listening and then speaking the way we did today and have them back to back. But then I'd encourage you to work with the teacher to see, how you can follow up, how you can give the kids more practice on this. Teachers are, Patrick can speak to this, I'm sure. Teachers are so pressured because there is so much that has to fit into every single day of that school year, every single class period, that it's important to have what we do fit into their standards, what they need to accomplish during the year. To ask for additional time to do something is sometimes really putting somebody in a hard spot. So you just need to really be able to have that conversation with the teacher and find out what's going to work best.
This is relevant to me, maybe not others. Does anyone else want to ask a question?
Go ahead.
Okay.
They can chime in after.
Okay. What colleges have you, and what courses in colleges has the program been adopted?
We've used it at Monmouth University. They have a graduate school program in counseling education. That you're talking about this particular set of lessons, correct?
Well, I'm talking really about any of it.
Oh,
but Monmouth University
that's too much.
School...
let me focus on just this one so that you have this one. So at the college level, this was Monmouth University, their graduate school of education, and it was educational counseling.
Okay.
We also did a community college presentation at Rowan College in Burlington County, which is the community college there that leads to Rowan College as a 4-year university. That was in their sociology department and their history department. We didn't do
Rowan was, how do you spell Rowan?
ROWAN.
Can I loosely refer to it as Rowan College?
Well, no, RCBC are the initials. That's Rowan College at Burlington County. It's a community college.
Okay. Okay.
Okay. And now I am blanking.
But well, I will just say that it's, the communication part has been used in graduate school in education on counseling, and it's also been used in a community college in both sociology and history classes.
Right. Okay. And then in high school, it's been used in things like the diversity club in a local high school. It was used in the middle school here in Neptune as just part of their, there's a youth advisory group that works with other kids in the school, in the middle school. There'll be more, but it'll pop up. Anyway, any other questions?
Yeah, I want to thank you I'm sorry.
Oh.
I apologize, but Beth had her hand up, so I am sorry.
Oh, no problem. I was wondering, how often do you get to do all 5 of the modules? Because it seems like, as you said, the teachers have so much they have to get done in their curriculum. If you're actually in the classroom, are you just lucky to be able to get one 45-minute period?
We go in and do what we're asked to do. We promote all of the programs and say, look at this and see what's going to fit into your curriculum the best, and then invite us in to do what you want us to do. In Neptune Middle School, we have done all of them. In other schools, we've done a single lesson. And that's fine. Whatever works and whatever's helpful is what we're aiming to do. Patrick?
Oh yeah, I wanted to thank you, just as we are going obviously in history department, but having this leadership course is going to be very cool to to be able to practice for the seniors, especially for their speaking skills, especially during debates, because obviously they're seniors in high school. So whether it's from prom stuff to school rules to obviously eventually issues with what's going on in the country, especially when we talk about leaders from today and the past, I think it's been very helpful. So I want to thank you.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that feedback, Patrick. Thanks.
Yes.
Okay, I think we're a minute late. I let you out a couple of minutes early yesterday, so you just made up for it. Thank you all. I hope that you will reach out. I'll get the videos out to you certainly by Monday. I hope earlier than that. I will apologize. I did forget to turn it back on when we came back from the break. So what is essentially missing was some of the videos of Kat and Abby talking back and forth, which I figure are accessible to people anyway. So anyway, I apologize about that.
I thought I had on the calendar another session for tomorrow.
Yes.
Okay.
Tomorrow is the voting simulation. It will be going through how do you set this thing up and how do you manage it? And then what are the slideshows that you can use that go along with it? One, to teach people just the basics of who, what, when, where, why, and how do you vote. And then the other one is the Student Advocate Toolkit, which is something the kids can download onto their phones that has basic information they can use to help remind their friends or to help people in their households who might need some prompting to vote or need to understand what a primary is about or need to know how to use a vote by mail ballot. It's all in that one little slideshow that they can have right in hand. So that's tomorrow. Thank you, folks. It's been great working with you.
Thank you. Thank you, Pat.
See you soon.
Bye, thanks.